So, who are our guests today? First of all, we have Merve, and she's a research manager at Meta with a background in qualitative research, qualitative methods more broadly, and she leads creator and content research for Horizon Worlds. She's been at Meta for over 8 years. Prior to working on Horizon, she has also worked at IG and on creators, so is very familiar with this space. Past lives worked in financial services, innovation, and research, and her superpower, which we hope will not be put to use during this Q&A, is the ability to fall asleep anytime, any place. So we're gonna keep that one at bay. And then we have Lauren Cheatham, who used to be on our team before she left us to go to Roblox. We don't hold it against her too much, I promise. But she's a behavioral scientist, basically a heavy quant. But you're very sociable too for a quant. It's not always the case. We know this to be true. And so at Roblox, she's the leading creator and engine researcher. PhD in consumer behavior from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, a BA and MA from Northwestern, which means that we are profound nemesis based on my undergraduate work. And she spent 2 years as a professor of marketing at the University of Hawaii's Scheidler College of Business. But before all this, she started her career as a professional equestrian. So I'm sure there will be questions about that, inevitably. But okay, so we can talk about the fun facts, but we're talking about researching creators in virtual worlds. I think just to kind of context set and level set, like how many of you either personally or like kids, close family members, use Roblox, use Horizon Worlds, use any type of like virtual world, just trying to gauge general familiarity? Okay. We have a few hands. Yeah, I would hope.
Yeah.
Know your product. So I think if you can both just provide an overview of the space to help build out general familiarity for everyone.
Sure, I can start. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Roblox, generally people think Roblox is a game. We are not a game. We are a gaming platform. We have millions of games on the platform created by millions of creators and developers. So you can conceptualize us as YouTube for games. I'm gonna look at our YouTube researcher. That it's independent developers building out millions of experiences on the platform. So we are a two-sided platform with our creators and our players, and many of our creators came out of our player community.
Yeah, and Horizon Worlds, +1 to everything you said. And I also like to define it as a social virtual platform because people build social relationships through the content that the creators offer to them on the platform. Many of the games and experiences are multiplayer, and that enables the building of those relationships between the community members, as well as between creators and the community.
And then more broadly, the kind of virtual world space, can you, like what else is there and how do you fit into the broader topology that is out in the market?
From a competitor space?
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any gamers in the audience? One lonely hand. Oh, two, three.
This is a safe space.
Yeah. To be clear, I am very gaming positive. So, I think gaming spans a broad variety of different things. Obviously, there mobile gaming, there's, anything from, looking at our New York Times person, our Wordle world, right? We've got that space. That is part of gaming. Whenever I ask people about gaming and I get no hands, I'm always like, who plays Wordle? And then suddenly I'm like, we got gamers. But in terms of the competitive space, it's quite broad because you've got everything from things like Fortnite, which you might be familiar with, that comes out of Epic Games, to things like World of Warcraft or Call of Duty, which you might be familiar with. A lot of these are multiplayer games, which both Horizon Worlds and Roblox are, have the ability to do multiplayer. So you have in real time multiple people gaming or playing together. The thing about Roblox that is markedly different than most other places, although Horizon is a little bit more similar in some ways, is that it's not necessarily what your mom would consider gaming, right? There is that, it exists on the platform, right? So you have your first person shooters, you have your platformers, you have kind of more traditional games the way that we might more traditionally think about games, but a lot of it is really social. So you see a lot of social facilitation through play happening on the platform. And if you'll permit me just a moment to tell you all my personal, how I came to Roblox. I have 2 kids. They are 10 and 13, 2 girls. And COVID was fun for all of us, as we all might recall. And it was a really isolating, lonely time. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say like Roblox got us through COVID, because my kids were able to hang out with friends and play despite not actually being able to be physically together. I would run into the living room to them literally playing hide and seek in a game, not a hide and seek game. They could create that gaming, that playful experience in the various experiences that are on the platform. So it was a very personal thing when Roblox did reach out to me, like on a very, very, very personal level, because it was so critical for like our survival through COVID. Not only that, my sister moved to Iceland. She's like so inconvenient. She's got 4 kids, and my kids are really close with her kids. And Roblox was a place that they could come together and play, because especially at that time, like now my 13-year-old can like gab on the phone all day, but 3 years ago that wasn't where she was at. It really needed to be playful in order to actually connect. So it provided this space for them to hang out and play hide and seek the way they would if they actually were physically together. And like I mentioned, my jerk of a sister who decided to move so far away, that can continue forward, because I would love for them to go and play outside of the playground, but that's not an option. And so Roblox actually allows for my kids and her kids to have that space to hang out together. So I think I just mostly want to explain, like, it's a unique space in that way. But when you're thinking about the competitive space, right, you've got kind of all this more traditional gaming. And then you've also got things like, again, for the few of you who game, you're probably familiar with Steam, which is a distribution platform. So we're a distribution platform. If you've ever built games, Unity and Unreal are the primary gaming engines. We have our own gaming engine. So that's also part of the competitive space. And then there's a full social aspect to it, which means not only Horizon Worlds, but any sort of social media app, in theory, could be seen as part of our competitor space.
And so, Merve, where does Horizon Worlds fit into all of this?
You explained it beautifully and very clearly. I'm going to add a couple of more things, which is, again, about the social connection side of things, which is like even FaceTime, Zoom calls, or events like this that happen in real life, but sometimes they cannot happen in real life, but still people need to kind of feel like they are together and interacting and listening to something or talking about it. The immersiveness and the virtual pieces of the app gives them that feeling of like togetherness, and also gives them, through games or gamified elements of those virtual worlds, gives them something to do together, because like, yeah, especially the younger generation, they are not like us. They cannot just, like be on a FaceTime call for like hours. They need to be doing something together to enjoy themselves, to enjoy that togetherness. So all of these things in terms of like socializing and being together and feeling like you're together in the same place.
Now, these kind of virtual spaces and being able to create, it's a highly nascent field. It has not been around for a long time. I think one of the broader questions that I have for both of you is, how do you stay on top of something that is still being defined, still being shaped, still being tapped into as, a number of things for different types of users? And I guess to make it more broadly applicable, like for people that are working in similarly quickly evolving spaces, like how do you go about that? What are your best practices as researchers?
Run really fast. It's really challenging. It's really challenging. I often describe working at a place like Roblox like you're researching, but it's the Wild West, right? Because there There are behaviors that are emerging that didn't exist before, in quite the same way. It's kind of similar to some of the amazing things that are happening with YouTube and Culture Lab, right? We see really interesting experimentation and exploration of identity and self happening on the platform, and the lines between virtual worlds and physical worlds are remarkably blurry. And that's really hard for, I think, those of us who aren't Gen Alpha or Gen Z to understand, because it's like you're in a game and you're in the real world. And there's a whole lot of talking about IRL. And like, I've worked really hard to stop saying IRL, because the experiences they're having in Roblox or in Horizon World are real. The friendships that they're making are real, right? All of these things are incredibly real. They're just virtual spaces versus physical spaces. And I think that's where it's like, especially as a researcher, when you were used to kind of conceptualizing the world in a certain way, and suddenly that gets just exploded. And now you need to think about like, oh my gosh, like there's, these lines are totally blurred. When we do work on the player side, we see that players, their avatars, they see them as an extension of themselves. It's not I don't know, we have any League of Legends fans in here, but like in League, you have a champion, you choose a champion. So Merve and I could choose the same champion. That's not an extension of who I am. I might cosplay, that'd be fun, but like it's not me. Whereas the avatars that young people are creating in Roblox, they actually, even if, to be clear, it's like a lizard head with a robot body and like rabbit ears, they still, like, when you talk to them, this is an extension of who they are. And I think that's something that's like really challenging to navigate. So you have to be paying attention all the time, because things are happening there also from a creation experience that are just so inconsistent with like how I came up in research. So I think it's constantly paying attention and then trying to identify new ways to understand the population. And to our Etsy, I forget your name, sorry. Right, talking about observation, I think that's one of the most critical things. It's like we have to do a lot of observing and then thinking like, okay, how do we reconsider our methodological approach given behaviors are so different here, right? Is there a world where maybe, and we're not doing this yet, but we talk about it, maybe that instead of a traditional survey, we actually send out an NPC that is engaging in conversation, but it's collecting data, right? Like these are the sorts of things that we need to start thinking about, because then it's much more real. It's actually versus, a pop-up. Tell me how you feel about Roblox today, right? Which, to be clear, we do that too. But to have that kind of interaction, it's just like a new way of thinking about it.
Question. Well, do we have a mic? Amazing.
Oh.
Hello. You've just blown my mind with having an NPC as like your research avatar. That's, I'm not sure. Excuse me. Sorry, you've really. I'm not sure about the user base of Horizon World. So, but Roblox, I at least have the perception that it's a kids game, and it's a very young kids game most of the time. How am I right? And how are you navigating research with kids? Because it's complicated.
What?
I never heard that one before.
So first thing, couple pieces of data. 58% of our player base globally is over the age of 13. Now, the majority of that is between the ages of 13 and 17. So I'm not saying we've got a bunch of 50-year-olds on there, although that exists, right? But so, I think that there is an assumption that we're super, super young, and that is a lot of how we came up. So it's not necessarily wrong to consider that. Of course, there's the regulatory environment. So we need to be very conscious and cautious around that. We actually have a developmental psychologist on the team. We are a tiny team of 6 of us, but we have somebody who is a dedicated, developmental psychologist, and she's the one who ends up doing a lot of the work with younger people. And then that's heavy, it's qualitative, right? There's some survey work that's done, but you have to do that with third-party panels so that you have full parental consent. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, especially when your cross-functional partners are like, well, how does under 13 feel? And I have to repeatedly say, I can't talk to them. in like large scale surveying. So it's challenging, but part of our intention is also to continue to age up, right? And so our goal is, we're at 58% over the age of 13, and hopefully that continues to expand, and that makes it a little bit easier, hopefully.
And for you, Merve, how do you stay on top of just this rapidly evolving landscape? What are new approaches that you're taking to conducting research, finding out about trends, what is happening, and how to kind of stay in front of that?
Yeah, great question. I want to refer back to something that you said in terms of like virtual and real world kind of blending, and the experiences in virtual worlds really feeling like real, and they are real to people. So I really like to layer research or see research as two different layers. One is like, you can stay at the solutions layer where you test the features or what is upcoming and like get feedback on that, which we all do, that there's nothing wrong with that and it is needed. And there's also this need space where you talk to people about their more foundational needs, because at the end of the day, all of these platforms, they are a medium to carry the experiences, the relationships, like they serve the foundational human needs in different ways. So I like a lot of people, a lot of researchers on my team and in similar areas, we talk a lot about those two layers and how to stay more grounded on the needs layer so that we can, because the needs layer, it doesn't change that much like from year to year. Yes, the technology changes. Yes, the application, the features change, but we can still give guidance to the teams by knowing about that base layer and connect them and anchor them to the like foundational needs layer.
Is it, I guess, because things change so quickly though, how easy or difficult is it for you to have that kind of evergreen understanding of the space, of the users, of the direction that it's headed, that you can kind of keep referencing back to?
I wouldn't say it's super easy, because at the end of the day, the space evolves, the age groups evolve, the trends within that age group, the teens when I was a teen and then the teens today, it's an entirely different group, right? So it is a little bit still like hard, but I think it is not at a pace that is not achievable to like do research.
I would add just a little bit to that, which is one of our number one most critical need on the platform, both from players and creators, is to have fun. And that's been evergreen. And I mean, evergreen, I've been there for 2.5 years. For 2.5 years, this has been really consistent. But the way fun is conceptualized from a player perspective and a creator perspective is meaningfully different. From the creator side, it's about the joy of creation, of executing on your creative vision. It's about collaboration with other people on your creative team. Some people are independent individual creators, and some are working with studios or with a good friend or something along those lines. But then it's also about the fun of building something, hitting publish, and seeing people start coming in and playing, right? It's like that incredible joy and gratification of seeing people come in and play, give you feedback, iterate, build more, and like fun is just a cornerstone. And again, this is something that I've had like lots of struggles with cross-functional partners, because they're like, especially with the creator population, they're like, monetization is all that matters. All that anybody cares about is money. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I can model this out for you. Like fun always comes out on top, and not just on top, like anywhere from like 3 to 10x, depending on what I'm looking at. And monetization matters, but there are a lot of creators who come in and are playing, right? They're engaging in a playful way with the engine. They're learning, they're growing, and they're actually like, monetization is like a happy outcome as opposed to their primary goal. It's not to say that some don't have that as a primary goal right out the gate, but that at the end of the day, even for those, and they're always like, well, what about our top creators? Monetization's all that matters to them. And I'm like, fun matters more to them. Like, partially because they've figured it out. They've figured out how to monetize on the platform and become incredibly financially successful. But like, we're in games. Yeah. That's fun. And if it's not fun, what are we doing, right? Like, and that's been like solid state.
Hi. So in prior life, before I was a user researcher, I was an educator. So, question for you all, particularly when, like you said, like Gen Alpha is different from other generations, where their first foray into communal spaces is more than likely digital versus a physical space. And so, in a physical space, you have adults telling you like, "Oh, okay, this is how you remain safe. Don't talk to strangers, et cetera, et cetera." How does Horizon and Roblox teach community safety to the youth as they're engaging on your products? And then also for Instagram, because I know you all are rolling out the teen version of IG. So just curious there.
Yeah, I can get started. We've got parental controls for teens and for even younger who are, I mean, they are not allowed on Horizon right now, but they're allowed to be on the headsets. So we've got parental controls that help parents to help guide their teens and sometimes control their activity or what they can do, who they can communicate with. And we have got also teen safety tools on the platform, which help them guide in the right direction, and also some community guides that again help the community keep everyone safe. So yeah, we have a variety of tools and programs to help teen safety. Yeah.
And that is also how it is on Instagram now as well. It's kind of an evolution or an extension of that experience.
Yeah, so we have all of that as well. We also have several thousand human moderators, crawling the platform. We also have machine learning and AI systems, especially in like any of our voice experiences, and those are age gated with age verification, to be clear, right? Like not just I said I'm 18. Right? Like, so there's an age verification element. The other thing is what we also have some evidence for, and I'm going to turn it back into a personal story just because it's easier to explain it that way, is again, young people practicing behaviors that they then transition into the physical world. So I, several years ago, realized I hadn't had the talk with my girls, the talk of like, oh my God, it's so scary on the internet. And I haven't sat you down and really gone through like what you need to do to be safe and how you handle these situations. And I felt terrible and I'm like sweating and I'm like, this is terrible. I can't believe I haven't done this yet. And I sat down with my older daughter and I was like, what do you do if you run into somebody on Roblox who's being rude or inappropriate? Do you know about the tools to block? I'm like so stressed out. And she was like, yeah, I just block them. And I was like, that's so casual. She's just like, I block them. And I was like, so you know how to block? And she was like, yeah, we all know how to block. And then I was like, okay, how do you navigate these different situations? And like the comfort with which she was like, oh, I report and I block and this is how I do things was unbelievable, which isn't to say that this is the case for every single kid or every single individual, but like recognizing the importance of making those sorts of tools really clear and obvious to young people. And this generation their orientation towards this sort of thing is, again, so different from mine. A few weeks after that conversation, she had a real in the flesh bully, like bad, right? And again, I'm like a sweating mess of a mother. Like I failed. I didn't tell. How do we handle this? And the bully got her phone number, and it was like a nightmare situation. And then I was like, oh, what am I gonna do? We're gonna sit down. We're gonna talk through this. And she was like, oh, I blocked her. And again, it was like this comfort and confidence and casualness in how she did it. And, listen, it's a little Pollyanna, I understand, in terms of how I'm talking about it. But this was also the reality, right? It was like this incredible comfort with setting a boundary. She'd been practicing boundary setting in a virtual space, probably sometimes getting it wrong, right? Blocking somebody who is just annoying, which she does. But like it gave her this confidence in the physical world that I do not have, right? That's like a really scary thing. Like, right? I get like spam and I'm like, do I block it? is so rude. It could hurt their feelings, right? And it's a very interesting dynamic, and that we're seeing with younger users more generally.
Hi, I'm Brenda. I'm a researcher at Instagram. I'm really interested in this construct of play. I think it's probably bigger than games. And I think it should be fun to create, whether you're making videos. I think it should feel playful too. So I'm curious as a researcher, how do y'all measure play and fun? Like when you're observing players or creators in Roblox or in Horizon, like what do you observe that's indicative of fun? Is it like, are there certain survey questions you found that do a good job, or is it like a Likert scale is this fun too?
I do have a Likert scale, not fun. No, see, I do. And then, of course, you get people being like, well, what does fun mean? And then we did a qualitative deep dive to get some clarification on what that construct was. And that qualitative work was pretty clear, like how I explained from the creator side of like what is defined as fun. I think, again, this is from a creator side, this is a creative endeavor. Like if you have the drive to create and like that passion, like it's a joyful experience for you. And part of our goal is to like take away the stuff that makes you want to pull your hair out and like hone in on the fun, creative piece. So again, from the creator perspective, there's a critical element of creativity, right? And execution on creative vision. And like, if any of you paint or play music or anything like that, it's that amazing feeling you have when you like nail it, or you step back and you're like, it's gorgeous. Or you step back and you're like, it could be better. Like, I'm going to now go in and keep working on it. And then, so fun on the creator side, I think, is this interesting mix of creativity, the joy of creativity, the execution element, that feeling of like, I did that, right? Which is distinctly different than the play that's happening on the player side, which is like classic play from like how we would traditionally conceptualize it.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a very, intangible, like fluffy term to say fun, but when, like as a qual researcher, when you go dive deep into it and like, tell me more about it. What makes this fun? How would you describe your, most recent fun experience? Where did it happen? Who you were with? And like all of those questions make it very tangible and hence kind of measurable at the end of the day. And yeah, it depends on who you're talking to, whether a player or a creator. And most especially on the creator side, it can be some accomplishment, hitting publish of their for their roles, or collaborating with someone and achieving something through that collaboration. Like all of these things can be under the umbrella of fun. And yeah, it's fun to research that.
It is really fun research. I agree.
That's good. So I do want to kind of pull us back to the creator piece. We've heard about all different sort of modes of creators today. We've had fans as creators. We have sellers as creators. Obviously, creators in like your respective universes are a different breed, right? Can you unpack what like a Roblox creator is or a Horizon creator is, and kind of how they arrived where they are and kind of went on that journey? Because my understanding is that it's slightly different from our own understandings of like more traditional kind of like artist, influencer, creative progressions.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can get started. So for Horizon Worlds, creators usually start as playing on the platform. They like it, they like the games, and they're like, I wanna make my own. Like, can I do that? Like, is it possible? And then they discover the tools, get started with them, build some skills over time. And then there are kind of little milestones along the way that keep them going. They either gain a new skill set, they meet someone that has kind of similar passions with them, and they reach to their first kind of shippable version of the world, and then they have some playtesters in there, like share their vision with them and get some feedback, improve it. Like all of these milestones keep them going. As you can see, this is a very kind of involved and kind of fairly long process compared to creating content for social media. So yeah, like they really need to be dedicated and passionate about their vision and find fun across using using your tools and across the community relationships that they have with other creators. And they tend to be over time become more and more technical to be able to build better games. So that's also another differentiating point from a more regular social media user base.
Yeah, so the population that's building games on Roblox is highly technical or learning. They're also really heterogeneous in terms of their backgrounds, right? So you have a jacks of all trades, the indie developer, a single person, like kind of just like doing their best to do all these different things. But you also have teams, which is a little bit different than, I mean, of course, on social media there are potentially teams, but you've got teams where one person's a scripter, one person's a 3D modeler, one person has the like larger vision for what like the game design is. And then as you move along, there's kind of all sorts of different layers of technical skills that are needed. It's also not a very linear process. So having worked on creator tools at Instagram, it's not perfectly linear, but it was a relatively linear process. You kind of understood, like, given I do step one, I know what step two is. Whereas at Roblox, a lot of it's very exploratory. You've got creators that are building plugins, right? You've got creators that are just straight up UGC creators, like they're making accessories for avatars. You've got full-blown game designers. You have all these different types of creators in their process. It's like really hard to establish a creator journey because it's like you can't, like, following that like path, you know, if you imagine like heat mapping it, it's just like wild, right? It's like a Jackson Pollock. There's not this kind of clear path. And so understanding that can be incredibly challenging, and then understanding their unique needs, because the unique needs of somebody who's a hardcore, like I've got a CS background and I am a hardcore coder, is incredibly different from a 3D modeler who primarily works in Blender. Like, it's just like, and there are all sorts of different tools that are being used, some of which, you know, are being ported over into the Roblox Studio system, and it creates, I mean, it's amazing, but half the time I'm talking to creators and I'm like, okay, you gotta explain to me what you do in language that makes sense to a fourth grader.
Yeah, I was going to say, more practically, how do you actually map out these different personas or figure out what these different journeys are like, because they are so like, highly varied?
It's with a lot of hard work, it's super challenging, and a lot of it is literally going out and asking, okay, you know, kind of setting up in terms of like survey structure to understand like what is the distribution of the different jobs that are on the platform for creators, recognizing that many people are in a learning journey. Right, so it's not even right. They don't have a traditional creation process because they are learning as they go. We also have our own coding language, so like layer on. You need to. Great that you know C#. It's not useful here, right? So you have to learn a new coding language, and so you know you've got those who are learning, right? Those who come in with a really strong skill set and can build and ship something within a couple of months, but it's a couple of months, right? This process is way longer, and then it's a constant iteration, right? You're constantly doing updates, and then maybe you're in a situation where you actually have live ops, right? You have events happening in your experience that actually need a human or many humans engaged and involved. We have games that are big enough that they hire their own moderators, right? So we have our moderators, but they hire another set of moderators to be on, like, in the game, engaging and moderating. And so it's like, you know,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's really exhausting. By the way, I lead creator research. Also, I'm the only one. I lead myself. So
you seem to be doing a good job.
Hi, I'm Kem. I'm just curious. One of the themes that I've noticed from previous chats is just community as a lever for driving like the increase in like creators that we're seeing. or the number of creators or viewers becoming creators, buyers maybe become sellers, and are creators in ways. I just wonder if you had any insights or thoughts about how does community drive that transition to typical users becoming creators within the virtual world context.
And how is it similar to or different from more common manifestations of community?
Yeah. So on Horizon Worlds, yes, community. I think that first I kind of dice it to two different types of community. One is like player community, the creators, virtual world builders, and the visitors that they have in those worlds. And also the community between the creators themselves, which is also super important because, as Lauren said, sometimes they work, and most often they work with as a team rather than working alone. So relying on a community to build skills, build a world, it's very important. And they get connected to those communities within the app, outside of the app. There are lots of forums, community forums out there that brings those creator communities together. And the communities with the players, like when we ask the creators about their motivations, why did you get started? Why are you still doing this? I think the first thing that they do is like, yeah, I want to have fun. And then we ask them to like define fun. They say, I want to bring my creative vision to life. And the second, I want to share it with other people. So I want people to be seeing what I'm enjoying, what I like to do what I like to do myself, and then enjoy it with me. And I want to see them enjoying the same thing and build my own community and engage with them and understand how they like this, whether they like this or not. And yeah, it's a super important part of their motivation and keeps them going. I think what is different from a more traditional social media creator is community is usually about the content, the game, the world itself, rather than the creator's personality or what they do or who they are as a person in real life. So it's more communicating through the creative vision and through engagement, through interactivity, through the gameplay. So the content is really king, queen, everything.
This is where I think Roblox is a little bit different. So our top creator community, a lot of them came out of the player side, and being a Roblox creator is like core to their identity. It's not something they do on the side. It's not a side hustle. It's not something it's not just a way to make money. It is like who they are. So I love our community so much. they're just like the most amazing group of brilliant weirdos doing like just coming up with ideas that like don't make any sense, and then they build them and they're delightful, right? It's like nothing makes any sense. Our top games, like if you went to a VC and were like, fund this, they'd be like, no. That's insane. and then here these worlds exist, and you have them coming out of the player community. They're really inspired by the games that they see. And like some of our top creators, I just about a month ago was our Roblox developers conference. And, I'm talking to them and they're like, I've been on the platform for 12 years. And I'm like, oh, how old are you? And they're like, I'm 20. And I'm like, oh. And then you talk to them about their experience, like being self-taught, and then they find each other. So they find each other obviously playing on the platform, but then like massive Discord communities. Then we have our YouTube influencer community. I'm sorry, I'm calling them influencers, but that's what we call them internally. Yeah, I have learned nothing, but they are part of the creator population for certain. Some of them started out as they were game designers, and then they just like found their like a delightful community that started following them on YouTube, and then they became more like players or streamers, right? So they're doing some Twitch and some YouTube, and I think what's also really interesting is when you ask the community, like, what's the number one place that you're going to like get help, right? Because we have our own documentation. It's amazing, and then YouTube is the number one, the number one place where other creators are creating content about creation, tips and tricks. It's a really delightful symbiotic relationship that is like happening where our creator population is on Discord, it's on Twitch, it's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's in all these different places, and it's like feeding each other, inspiring each other. And when we get creators together, like they are community within themselves. They're expanding out their community, but like, again, Roblox Developers Conference is like one of the most delightful experiences ever. It's like 1,500 of our top creators, and they all love each other, and they're all like giving each other advice, and they're so incredibly supportive. It's truly unique.
One thing I'm curious about is with Horizon, with Roblox, how do you think about if your teams say, we want to grow the number of creators? It almost sounds like at Roblox you say, well, let's just get more people playing, or the people who are playing, let's wait till they grow up a little bit and like put a bug in their ear about some tools that we've got. Or I'm curious just more about that and what they look like for both. And
Sure. So I think there are a couple of different things. Because all the experiences and games on Roblox are built by the community, not by us, there are some creators who have built creation experiences that are essentially like light versions of our studio. And it's like a really great place to like play and kind of see what that feels like before you dive into the actual engine tool, which can be intimidating. So there's kind of a lot of talk about how we help creators create more games and experiences that are focused on building to give people a taste to try in a maybe a more like GUI type fashion, and that like maybe eventually some of them will then graduate into the full-blown tool. But there's kind of an expectation that the community will build these things because the community will recognize that there's a need for kind of a more simple building experience to kind of test the waters out. So there's that piece a lot. But then the other thing is it's like, you want to grow your creator community, but also realizing that especially when you've got incredibly complex game designing, having 10 million, that's not it's like not necessary to have a really thriving platform with a lot of really fantastic games. And so I think that kind of traditional growth metric that you're more concerned with on the player side isn't as critical on the creator side, as long as you have a big enough community that you're up-leveling people as they're coming up, that you're providing resources for, teams that are just starting out on the platform to level up over time. Like, of course, you want more and more awesome stuff, but it's not kind of that same need to have it be like, if we are not at 1 billion creators, we've somehow not succeeded.
I'm going to do just a
plus
time
one
check. We have just a couple more minutes. So go ahead, Merve.
Plus one, enabling community to help each other, I think speeds up that process a lot. And another thing that we think about when growing our creator community is to think about not only game developers, but also different types of creators that can exist, and I believe should exist on our platform. That might not be technical or game developers, but they can benefit still from the virtual social immersion of the virtual worlds. And if you think about it, the spaces in those virtual, they are free. You can create your own instance or the server and then invite your community to meet up there. So there are a lot of opportunities for traditional social media creators to be there, existing there, and engaging with their fans that way. So I also think about different types of use cases and creators that we can serve when it comes to creator growth.
Ben, any closing thoughts from the
I had
group,
one more
or-
question.
Yeah.
So I think maybe to bring it home for everyone here who largely do not work in this space, right? Like, what are your recommendations and what are the things that you've learned, especially in your past lives at Instagram, now being in this kind of growing area? Like, what should we take away in terms of best practices and how we approach research, how we think about creators, how we build for creators? Like, what are some of the things that you all have learned most recently that you're like, boy, more people need to be doing this or kind of adopting this practice? She has to think of her answer.
So first of all, it's not a super large community if you think about it. Creators, they're not as big as the regular users of the app. And when it comes to game developers, especially if you're looking for a particular skill set or if you're looking for a particular type of game that they are building, the research pool, the population can get incredibly small. So getting creative about that is super important. And as a qual researcher, I love that our community is kind of small. You need to be very creative. So that's like what differentiates this from the rest of the, I think, creators that we are talking about. And you need to get creative. It pushes you as a researcher. The second thing is like really aligning with creators' goals and really understanding them deeply. And what success means to them so that you can align the team's internal definitions of success with creator success. That's the only way that we can help them. And there are a lot of different types of assumptions, so kind of myth busting and like really anchoring the teams to create like how creators define their own success and what helps contribute that success is super crucial in this space.
So plus $1 million to all of that, totally aligned. I think this is a population. Our creator population is actually a couple million, so it's not that small. But again, it's only me, so it's not too hard to wear. I'm not going to wear them out yet. However. I think one of the things that navigating on this unique to how I have to navigate, but I think matters to everybody, is just thinking about the incredible passion of the community. And I actually run a lot of internal workshops at Roblox. Anybody who might be engaging with creators to just like get them to understand that, again, being a creator on Roblox is so core to their individual identity that you can't like. I kind of always say, like, you're going to want to act normal and be a normal person, and you're going to think that they're normal, but they're not. They're incredibly special, and we exist because of them, period. We exist because of them. And so I think deeply appreciating who that end user is, which I suspect we all do, like, right? None of us are in user research because we don't care about people. But I think, I've had the good fortune to work in user research with amazing teams and amazing companies. I have never been so passionate about a particular population, like so deeply passionate. And that really helps because they then see us as partners, right? And seeing them as partners, not as kind of just an end product, but like we exist because of them. We succeed if they succeed. And like deeply, deeply understanding that, I think is really critical. Yeah, I love them so much.
Katie.
And with that, thank you so much.